The crystal towers of Nexus Prime stretched toward the violet sky like frozen lightning. Each tower housed a different species of the Galactic Council, their alien architectures blending into something that was supposed to represent unity. Today, the towers buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 12 worlds gathered for an emergency session. Elena Vasquez walked through the main corridor, her boots clicking against the smooth crystal floor. She was the human ambassador, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many political games. Around her, various alien species moved with purpose. The tall, insect-like Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in hushed conversations. The floating energy beings called Luxari pulsed with different colors as they communicated. Everyone seemed to know something big was happening. Elena had been called to this session with only 6 hours' notice. That was unusual. Normally, the Council gave weeks of advance warning for any major meetings. She had spent those 6 hours reading reports and making calls back to Earth, trying to understand what this was really about. The answers she got were not encouraging. The main council chamber was a massive dome that could hold thousands. 12 elevated platforms arranged in a circle, each designed for a different species. The human platform was deliberately placed at the same level as the others, but Elena noticed that today it felt lower somehow. Maybe it was just her imagination, or maybe the other species had adjusted their platforms slightly higher. Speaker Zethkari floated to the center of the chamber. The Luxari was one of the oldest members of the council, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell. When it spoke, its voice came from speakers throughout the dome, translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. Representatives of the Galactic Council, Zethkari began, its shell pulsing with formal blue light. We gather today to address a matter of great importance to the stability and order of our civilized galaxy. Elena felt her stomach tighten. She had been in politics long enough to know that when someone talked about stability and order, they usually meant control. For the past 50 years, the speaker continued, humanity has been a member of our galactic community. In that time, they have expanded rapidly across 37 systems. They have established trade relationships with numerous species, both within and outside council jurisdiction. They have shared their technologies freely and formed what they call partnerships with developing civilizations. The way Zethkari said partnerships made it sound like a dirty word. Elena noticed several other representatives shifting uncomfortably. The Kaplarians, with their 4 arms, were drumming nervously on their platform. The rock-like Terrans were completely still, which for their species usually meant deep concern. While we appreciate humanity's enthusiasm, the speaker went on, their methods are becoming problematic. They do not follow established protocols for first contact. They share advanced technologies with species that have not earned such privileges through the proper channels. Most concerning, they encourage political and economic arrangements that bypass council oversight. Elena stood up slowly. Speaker Zethkari, if I may ask for clarification, are we being accused of breaking any specific laws or treaties? The energy being's shell flickered. Not laws, Ambassador Vasquez, but there are expectations, standards, ways of doing things that have kept peace in this galaxy for thousands of years. I see. Elena kept her voice calm and professional. And what specifically would the Council like humanity to change? Another representative spoke up. This was Consul Vraktar of the Nexari, a species that looked like walking trees with too many eyes. The issue is not what you have done wrong, humans. The issue is what you might do. Your expansion is too fast. Your technology sharing is too generous. Your political influence grows too quickly. You make friends too easily, added High Merchant Zilix of the Zephyrians, its insect head tilting in what might have been disapproval. Other species listen to you more than they listen to us. This is concerning. Elena felt a flash of anger but kept it hidden. So this was what it was really about. The humans were becoming too popular, too influential. They were upsetting the careful balance of power that the older species had maintained for millennia. Zethkari pulsed brighter, regaining control of the session. The Council has prepared a proposal that will address these concerns while allowing humanity to remain a valued member of our community. A holographic document appeared in front of Elena. She read through it quickly, then read it again more slowly to make sure she understood correctly. Her expression remained neutral, but inside, she was furious. The document was titled, Guidance Protocols for Developing Civilizations. It was written in the polite language of diplomacy, but its meaning was clear. Humanity would be required to get council approval before establishing new colonies. They would need permission before sharing any technology with non-council species. All trade agreements would have to be reviewed and approved by a council committee. Most insulting of all, human representatives would be assigned advisors from older council species to help guide their decisions. This is quite comprehensive, Elena said finally. How much time do we have to consider this proposal? 48 hours, Zethkari replied. We understand this is a significant change, but the council believes it is necessary for the good of all. Elena noticed that several representatives avoided meeting her eyes. The Keplerians were drumming faster now. Even some of the more alien species seemed uncomfortable. She wondered how many of them actually supported this and how many were just going along with it. I will need to consult with my government, Elena said. This kind of decision cannot be made by an ambassador alone. Of course, the speaker agreed. We look forward to humanity's positive response. These protocols will help ensure that your species develops in a way that benefits everyone. As the session ended, Elena gathered her things slowly. Several representatives approached her as she prepared to leave. Merchant Zilix clicked nervously as it spoke. Ambassador, please understand this is not personal. Your species has many admirable qualities, but change must be managed carefully. Consul Vraktar rustled its leaves, and what Elena had learned was an expression of regret. The young sometimes grow too fast for their own good. Guidance helps prevent mistakes, Elena smiled politely. I understand your concerns. I will make sure my government considers all aspects of this proposal. As she walked back through the crystal corridors, Elena's mind was racing. She had expected political pressure eventually. Humanity's rapid expansion and unconventional methods were bound to make some species nervous. But she had not expected something this blatant. The Council was essentially demanding that humanity become a client state, giving up their independence in exchange for continued membership. She thought about the colonies humanity had established. The research stations where human and alien scientists worked together on projects that neither could complete alone. The trade routes that had brought prosperity to dozens of worlds. The refugee settlements where humans had helped displaced populations rebuild their lives. All of that would end under these protocols. Humanity would become just another controlled member of the Council, their innovations channeled through bureaucratic committees, their natural instinct to help others filtered through political considerations. Elena reached her quarters and immediately opened a secure channel to Earth. She had 48 hours to get a response, but she already knew what that response would be. She had worked with the current administration long enough to understand their principles. As she began composing her initial report, Elena allowed herself a small smile. The council members thought they were being very clever, using their superior numbers and established power to force humanity into compliance. They had made one critical mistake, though. They had assumed that humanity needed the council more than the council needed humanity. Elena suspected they were about to discover just how wrong that assumption was. Exactly 48 hours after the council session, every communication system in council space received the same message. It was not sent through diplomatic channels or official networks. Instead, it appeared simultaneously on news feeds, emergency broadcasts, trade frequencies, and even personal communication devices. The message was simple and brief. The United Earth government thanks the Galactic Council for their proposal. After careful consideration, humanity respectfully declines to accept the guidance protocols. Effective immediately, all human citizens and operations will withdraw from Council territory. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Elena Vasquez, final ambassador to the Galactic Council. Speaker Zethkari was in a meeting with other council leaders when the message arrived. Its crystalline shell flashed through several colors before settling on a confused yellow. This must be some kind of negotiating tactic, it said to the others. They cannot seriously intend to withdraw completely. High Merchant Zilix clicked its mandibles nervously. Perhaps they hope to make us reconsider the protocols. Humans are known for dramatic gestures. Consul Vraktar's leaves rustled with uncertainty. Should we contact Ambassador Vasquez to clarify their intentions? But when they tried to reach the human embassy on Nexus Prime, they found it empty. Not abandoned, empty. The humans had packed everything. Furniture, equipment, personal belongings. Even the special atmospheric processors they had installed to make the building comfortable for human staff. They had left the building clean and undamaged, with a polite note thanking the building management for their service. This was when the first reports started coming in from across Council space. On Kepler Station, the human research team had finished their shift as normal, then quietly packed their laboratories and departed on a transport ship. On Zephyr Prime, human traders had completed their current contracts, paid all outstanding debts, and left the trading complex with formal goodbye messages to their business partners. The pattern was the same everywhere. Humans were leaving, but they were doing it properly. They finished their work commitments. They fulfilled existing contracts. They said polite goodbyes. They cleaned up after themselves. And then they simply disappeared. Dr. Sarah Chen had been working on a joint xenobiology project with the Terrans for 3 years. Her Terran colleague, researcher Boulder Who Thinks Deeply, was confused when she announced she was leaving. But our work is not finished, Boulder Who Thinks Deeply said in the slow, careful way that Terrans spoke. We are close to understanding the protein synthesis mechanism. Why do you stop now? Sarah packed her data crystals and research notes into a secure container. I know, Boulder. I am sorry. I have to go home now. Home is wherever the work is, the Terran replied, using an old saying of their species. Your work is here. Sarah paused in her packing. She had grown fond of Boulder Who Thinks Deeply during their time working together. The Terran was brilliant, patient, and had taught her things about mineral-based life that she never could have learned elsewhere. My government has decided that we cannot stay in Council space anymore, she explained. But I will miss working with you. You have been a good friend and an excellent scientist. The Terran was quiet for a long moment, which was normal for their species when processing complex information. Finally, it spoke again. Will humans continue this research in your new location? Yes, Sarah said. And if you ever want to visit our laboratories, you would be welcome. We believe science should be shared with friends. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Human doctors said goodbye to their alien patients, promising to send their medical research to the local hospitals. Human engineers finished their current projects and left detailed instructions for maintenance. Human teachers completed their lessons and provided study materials for their alien students to continue learning. On the trade world of Commerce Central, human logistics coordinator James Park was having a difficult conversation with his Zephyrian supervisor, Manager Buzzix. You cannot leave now, Buzzix insisted, its compound eyes reflecting anxiety. The shipment schedules will collapse without your routing algorithms. We have 17 different species with incompatible navigation systems, all depending on your coordination protocols. James finished backing up his files to a portable storage device. I have prepared detailed documentation of all the routing systems. Your team should be able to maintain them. Should be able. Buzzix's mandibles clicked rapidly. James, you design systems that we do not fully understand. The mathematical models alone require processing power that we do not have. I am sorry, James said, and he genuinely meant it. I have done my best to document everything. But I have to leave. Buzzix was quiet for a moment, then asked, Where will you go? Home, James replied. Beyond the Rim territories. There is work for us there. What the Council did not immediately understand was the scope of what was happening. They saw the obvious departures. The embassies closing, the research teams leaving, the trade missions ending. But humans had been quietly integrated into galactic civilization in ways that no one had fully tracked. On Nexus Prime itself, the Council's main computer systems began experiencing problems within hours of the human departure. Error messages appeared in languages that the translation software could not parse. Security protocols failed for reasons that the Luxari technicians could not identify. The atmospheric controls for the human embassy building malfunctioned, even though no humans lived there anymore. It was a young Keplerian technician named Zix who discovered the first clue. While investigating the computer problems, Zix found thousands of small programs running in the background of the Council's systems. Each program was elegantly designed, performed a specific function, and had been written by human programmers over the past 50 years. They are everywhere, Zix reported to its supervisor. Humans have contributed code to almost every major system we operate. Translation protocols, navigation systems, resource allocation programs, even the environmental controls. And now that they are gone, the programs are starting to fail. The supervisor, an older Keplerian named Vox, examined the data with growing alarm. Can we repair these programs? Zix's forearms moved in a gesture of uncertainty. Some of them, perhaps, but many use human mathematical concepts that we do not fully understand. And some appear to be connected to systems outside Council space that are no longer responding to our queries. As reports came in from across the galaxy, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Humans had not just been participants in galactic civilization, they had been quietly essential to its operation. Their departure was like removing a crucial component from a complex machine. Everything continued to function for a while, but slowly, systems began to break down. On the mining world of Zerion 7, the automated extraction systems that had been running smoothly for decades suddenly stopped working. The local Zerioni had always assumed these were systems built by their own ancestors. Only when human technician Maria Santos left did they discover that she had been quietly maintaining and upgrading the systems for 15 years. Trade routes that had operated efficiently for generations began experiencing delays and routing errors. It turned out that human logistics experts had been coordinating shipments between species whose navigation systems were completely incompatible. Without human translators and coordinators, cargo ships began getting lost or arriving at the wrong destinations. Most concerning of all were the reports from the outer territories. Several species that the Council had classified as developing or pre-industrial were experiencing sudden technological failures. Equipment that had been working for years was breaking down, and the local populations did not know how to repair it. A closer investigation revealed that humans had been quietly providing technical support to dozens of species across the galaxy. Not through official Council programs, but through private partnerships and informal agreements. Human engineers had been maintaining power grids on primitive worlds. Human doctors had been providing medical support to species with limited healthcare systems. Human teachers had been running educational programs that the Council had never even known existed. Within a week of the human departure, the Council was facing a crisis that none of them had anticipated. Systems were failing, trade was disrupting, and the complex web of relationships that held galactic civilization together was beginning to unravel. And from beyond the rim territories, where humans had begun establishing their new colonies, there was only silence. 3 weeks after the human exodus, the Galactic Council held an emergency session that was very different from their last meeting. The crystal towers of Nexus Prime still reached toward the violet sky, but now several of them flickered with unstable energy. The environmental systems were struggling without human-maintained code, and the air in some sections smelled wrong. Speaker Zethkari floated in the center of the chamber, its crystalline shell pulsing with an agitated red color. Around the circle, the other representatives looked tired and stressed. Several platforms that had been perfectly maintained for centuries now showed signs of technical problems. The situation reports, Zethkari announced, are not encouraging. That was an understatement. The reports had been coming in for days, each one worse than the last. The careful order that had defined galactic civilization for millennia was breaking down with shocking speed. High Merchant Zilix clicked nervously as it delivered the trade report. 17 major shipping routes have collapsed completely. The automated cargo systems that managed interspecies transport were apparently dependent on human coordination protocols. We have ships carrying food to worlds that need electronics, and ships full of raw materials arriving at agricultural colonies. The Zephyrian's compound eyes reflected the stress that all the merchants of its species were feeling. Commerce Central, the great trade hub that connected thousands of worlds, was in chaos. Without human logistics coordinators, the complex web of trade relationships between incompatible species was falling apart. How long before the routing systems can be repaired? Asked Consul Vraktar, its leaves rustling with concern. Zilix's mandibles clicked in what Elena had learned was an expression of despair. Our best programmers estimate months, possibly years. The human routing algorithms were integrated with navigation systems from dozens of different species. We do not even understand all the languages they used in their code. Worse than the trade problems were the infrastructure failures. Researcher Boulder, who thinks deeply, spoke for the Terrans, its slow voice carrying bad news. Zerion 7 mining operations have stopped completely. The extraction systems were more complex than we understood. Human technician Maria Santos had been maintaining quantum resonance extractors that our people cannot even identify, much less repair. The Zerion 7 situation was particularly embarrassing for the Council. For decades, they had held up the mining world as an example of successful Zerioni development. The automated mining systems produced rare materials that powered technology across the galaxy. Now they discovered that the Zerioni systems had actually been maintained by a single human engineer who had quietly kept them running for 15 years. "What about power generation?" asked Deputy Fricks of the Altarians, an aquatic species that spoke through water-filled speakers. Boulder, who thinks deeply's rocky body shifted slightly, which for Terrans indicated deep embarrassment. 63% of Council member worlds are experiencing power grid problems. Humans apparently provided maintenance support for fusion reactors, solar collection arrays, and geothermal systems across the galaxy. Many of these systems are now operating at reduced efficiency or failing completely. The Luxari representative, Glow of Ancient Wisdom, pulsed with confused colors as it spoke. Our energy beings assumed that power management was a simple matter for physical species. We did not realize how complex your energy systems had become with human improvements. But the infrastructure problems were only the beginning. The real crisis was becoming clear in the outer territories, where species that the Council had largely ignored were facing disasters. Research Director Humlot of the Vegan Collective delivered the most disturbing report. The Vegans were one of the newer Council members, and they had been studying the situation in the frontier regions. "We have identified 47 species experiencing critical system failures," Humlot said, its triangular head weaving in distress. "These are worlds that the Council classified as developing or pre-industrial. We assumed they were managing their own technological development." "And they were not?" Seth Kari asked, though it was beginning to suspect the answer. "No, Speaker. Human support teams had been providing technical assistance to these worlds for decades. Medical equipment, communication systems, transportation networks, educational programs, all maintained by human specialists working outside official Council oversight. The scope of the problem was staggering. Humans had been quietly supporting the development of dozens of species that the Council had written off as unimportant. While the Council focused on managing the major powers and maintaining political balance, humans had been building relationships with everyone else. On Takara Prime, a world of peaceful aquatic beings, the water purification systems that supported their major cities were failing. The local Takarans had always assumed these systems were ancient technology from their ancestors. They had no idea that human environmental engineers had been quietly upgrading and maintaining them for 30 years. On the desert world of Kemri, the atmospheric processors that made the air breathable for the local insectoid population were shutting down one by one. Human technicians had been keeping them running while training local workers, but the training programs took decades to complete. Most heartbreaking were the medical reports. Human doctors had been providing healthcare support to species across the galaxy, often in secret partnerships with local medical professionals. Now, hospitals on dozens of worlds were facing shortages of medicine, equipment failures, and lost medical knowledge. Dr. Veltar of the Andromedan Medical Collective spoke with visible emotion. Human physicians have been sharing medical research freely with any species that requested it. They have provided treatments for diseases that we thought were incurable. Their departure has left medical professionals across the galaxy without access to cutting-edge research and treatment protocols. The political implications were becoming clear as well. Species that had been content to remain under Council oversight were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. If humans could provide better support for technological development, why did they need the Council at all? Intelligence reports from Council security services painted a disturbing picture. On world after world, local populations were demanding to know why their governments had not maintained better relationships with humanity. Some were questioning whether Council membership was actually beneficial. Security Chief Grathmore of the Nixari delivered the most concerning intelligence report. "We are detecting increased communication traffic between non-Council species and territories beyond the Rim. These species appear to be seeking contact with human colonies. That is not permitted under our treaties," Seth Kari replied automatically. Grathmore's many eyes blinked in sequence, which was a sign of nervousness among the Nixari. Speaker, these species are not bound by our treaties, and some are beginning to question why they should respect our territorial claims at all. The most damaging reports came from the Council's own member species. The younger members in particular were expressing frustration with the situation. Representative Kixara of the Rigelian Republic spoke with barely controlled anger. My people are asking why the Council forced humanity to leave. The humans were providing research support that has advanced our science by centuries. Now that support is gone, and our people blame the Council for the loss. Similar sentiments were being expressed across the galaxy. The humans, it turned out, had been far more popular than the Council had realized. Their approach to cooperation and mutual support had resonated with species that felt overlooked or undervalued by the traditional Council. Hierarchy. Deputy Minister Flux of the Centauri Alliance delivered perhaps the most damaging assessment. Our public opinion surveys show that 68% of our population viewed humans more favorably than they view the Council. They see the human departure as a failure of Council leadership. As the reports continued, a clear picture emerged. The humans had not just been members of galactic civilization. They had been its most active supporters and enablers. While the Council had focused on maintaining power and managing political relationships, humans had been quietly building the infrastructure that made modern galactic society possible. They had done it without fanfare, without demanding recognition, and often without even informing the Council of their activities. They had simply seen problems and worked to solve them, species that needed help and provided assistance, opportunities for cooperation and pursued them. Now they were gone, and the galaxy was discovering just how much it had depended on their quiet contributions. Speaker Zethkari pulsed with a deep blue color that indicated serious thought. What options do we have for re-establishing contact with humanity? The response was immediate and unanimous. Nobody knew. The humans had withdrawn completely beyond the Rim territories, and they were not responding to any attempts at communication. It was as if they had simply vanished from the galaxy, leaving behind only the slowly failing systems they had once maintained. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council faced a crisis that they could not solve through political maneuvering or diplomatic pressure. They had lost something irreplaceable, and they were only beginning to understand what that loss would cost them. 6 months after the human exodus, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The careful order that the Galactic Council had maintained for thousands of years was not just breaking down, it was being actively rejected by species that had once accepted Council authority without question. The first sign of the larger problem came from an unexpected source. The Cathara, one of the founding members of the Council and its primary military power, requested an emergency session to discuss matters of critical importance to our species' future. General Thrakesh of the Cathara military commanded respect from every species in the galaxy. The Cathara were warriors, but they were also known for their honor and their commitment to their word. When Thrakesh spoke, others listened. Honored Council members, the general began, its forearms crossed in a gesture of formal address. My people have been monitoring the situation beyond the Rim territories. We have disturbing news to report. Speaker Zethkari pulsed with cautious colors. In the months since the human departure, every piece of news seemed to be disturbing. Please proceed, General. Humanity has not simply withdrawn from our space, Thrakesh announced. They have been building something new. Our long-range scouts report massive construction projects in the Rim territories. New colonies, research stations, industrial complexes, and what appears to be a completely new form of interstellar government. The chamber fell silent. This was not what the Council had expected. They had assumed that humanity would eventually come back, perhaps with reduced demands and a willingness to accept the guidance protocols. The idea that humans were building an alternative to Council civilization had not occurred to them. What do you mean by a new form of government? Asked Consul Vraktar, its leaves rustling with concern. Thrakesh activated a holographic display that showed star maps of the Rim territories. Dozens of systems were marked with new settlements and infrastructure. They call it the Cooperative Federation. From what our scouts have observed, it operates on completely different principles than our Council. The display showed detailed images of human colonies that were thriving beyond anything the Council had seen. But what was most striking was that these were not purely human settlements. The colonies included dozens of different species, many of which the Council had never encountered before. "How many species have joined this federation?" Zethkari asked, trying to keep its concern from showing in its color patterns. "Our count is incomplete," Thrikesh replied, "but at least 74 different species now operate under Federation agreements. This includes 12 species that were formerly under Council oversight. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. Species were leaving Council space to join the Human Federation. This was not just about infrastructure failures or trade problems anymore. This was about the fundamental legitimacy of Council authority. Intelligence Director Sileth of the Vegan Collective provided more details. "Our analysis suggests that the Federation operates without the hierarchical structure that defines our Council. Species maintain their independence while cooperating on mutual projects. Decisions are made through consensus rather than authority. That cannot possibly work," declared High Merchant Zilix. "How do they resolve disputes? How do they manage resources? How do they maintain order?" Silith's triangular head weaved in what might have been uncertainty. "We do not fully understand their methods, but the results are undeniable. Federation colonies are experiencing rapid technological development, economic growth, and what appears to be high levels of citizen satisfaction." The reports that followed painted a picture that challenged everything the Council believed about galactic governance. The Federation was not just working. It was thriving in ways that Council space was not. Dr. Melvar of the Andromedan Medical Collective had particularly disturbing news. Federation medical facilities are treating patients from across the galaxy, including Council space. They are sharing their research freely and have developed treatments for several diseases that we considered incurable. "Are they charging for these treatments?" asked Deputy Fricks of the Altarians. "No," Dr. Melvar replied. "They appear to provide medical care based on need rather than ability to pay. Several Council member worlds have been quietly sending patients to Federation hospitals." The economic reports were equally concerning. Trader Vixal of the Outer Colonies Economic Union had been monitoring Federation trade activities. Their economic model defies conventional understanding. They share resources freely between member worlds, provide technological assistance without demanding payment, and have created trade relationships based on mutual benefit rather than profit maximization. "How is this sustainable?" Zilix asked, its mandibles clicking with confusion. "We do not know," Vixal admitted, "but Federation colonies have higher productivity rates, lower resource waste, and more equitable distribution of goods than most Council worlds. Their economic growth rate is approximately 3 times the Council average. Perhaps most damaging to Council prestige were the reports about species that were actively seeking to join the Federation. The waiting list for Federation membership included dozens of worlds, many of which were current Council members or protectorates. Ambassador Quindar of the Tau Ceti Alliance delivered the most politically sensitive information. 17 Council member worlds have formally requested information about Federation membership requirements. 9 have begun the process of withdrawing from Council treaties to pursue Federation partnerships. The chamber erupted in concerned voices, species speaking in a dozen different languages and communication methods all expressing the same sentiment. This was a catastrophe. The Council was not just losing influence. It was losing members to an alternative that many species found more attractive. But the most devastating report came from the outer territories, where the species that had been quietly supported by human assistance were facing a choice between Council oversight and Federation partnership. Research Director Humlot provided the assessment that everyone feared. 41 of the 47 species experiencing infrastructure failures have requested Federation assistance. 32 have received immediate help, including technical support, medical aid, and educational resources. All of this provided freely, with no political conditions attached. "What kind of assistance?" Zethkari asked, though it was beginning to dread the answer. "Complete infrastructure repair and upgrade programs," Humlot replied. "Medical facilities that exceed Council standards. Educational systems that provide technical training in multiple fields. And most significantly, technology transfer agreements that give these species access to advanced equipment and knowledge." The contrast was stark and humiliating. While the Council debated protocols and maintained hierarchical relationships, the Federation was simply helping anyone who asked for assistance. Species that had spent decades under Council oversight with limited development were experiencing rapid advancement under Federation partnerships. The Takaran situation was typical of the problem. The aquatic beings whose water purification systems had failed after human departure had requested Council assistance. The Council had offered to study the problem and develop a solution within 18 months, provided the Takarans agreed to new oversight protocols. The Federation had responded within 2 weeks. Human engineers and Takaran technicians working together had not only repaired the failing systems but upgraded them to handle the population growth that Takara Prime would experience over the next century. The work was completed in 6 weeks with no political conditions attached. Similar stories were coming in from across the galaxy. The desert world of Kemri, the mining colonies of the Zarian system, the research stations of the Outer Rim, all were receiving Federation assistance while the Council struggled with bureaucratic procedures and political concerns. General Thrakesh delivered the final piece of devastating intelligence. Our scouts report that Federation territory now includes more than 200 star systems and is expanding rapidly. Their population exceeds 6 billion individuals from dozens of different species. They have established trade relationships with non-aligned worlds throughout the galaxy. Most concerning, the general continued, is their military capability. The Federation maintains what they call defensive coordination forces, joint military units composed of multiple species working together. Our analysis suggests that their combined military strength may already exceed that of several Council member fleets. The implications were clear. The Federation was not just an alternative to Council civilization, it was becoming a rival power. And it was attracting members by offering something the Council had never provided: genuine cooperation without political domination. Speaker Zethkari pulsed through several color combinations as it processed the scope of the situation. Are there any indications that humanity might be willing to negotiate a return to Council space? The answer came from an unexpected source. Young technician Zix of the Keplerians, who had been monitoring communication frequencies, requested permission to speak. Speaker, we have detected one communication from Federation Space DII. 1 year after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council faced its greatest crisis in recorded history. The crystal towers of Nexus Prime still reached toward the violet sky, but now only 8 of the original 12 were occupied. The Kithara had been the first to leave, followed by the Rigelians, the Tau Ceti Alliance, and the Outer Colonies Economic Union. Each departure had sent shockwaves through what remained of Council space. Speaker Zethkari floated alone in the center of the great chamber, its crystalline shell cycling through colors of deep distress. The remaining representatives sat in their platforms, but the chamber felt empty despite their presence. The absence of the departed members was like missing teeth in a smile, obvious and painful. The final session had been called to address the constitutional crisis of legitimacy, though everyone knew it was really about deciding whether the Council should continue to exist at all High Merchant Zilix, now representing the severely reduced trade networks that remained in Council space, delivered the economic report that everyone dreaded. Trade volume has declined by 73%. 46 major shipping routes have been abandoned completely. The remaining routes are increasingly inefficient due to reduced coordination capabilities. The numbers were devastating, but they told only part of the story. It was not just that trade had declined, it was that the nature of trade itself had changed. The Federation had introduced new models of economic cooperation that made traditional Council commerce seem outdated and exploitative. "What about the species that have remained with us?" asked Consul Vraktar, its leaves rustling with what little hope remained. Zilix's mandibles clicked in a pattern that expressed regret. "They are restless. Public opinion surveys show declining support for Council membership across all remaining worlds. Many are questioning why they should continue to pay Council fees when the Federation offers better services for free." Research Director Humlot of the Vegan Collective provided the intelligence assessment that confirmed everyone's fears. Federation territory now encompasses over 400 star systems. Their population exceeds 12 billion individuals from more than 100 different species. They have established formal diplomatic relationships with every major non-aligned power in the galaxy. The scope of Federation growth was staggering. In just 1 year, Humanity and their partners had built something that rivaled the Council in size and exceeded it in efficiency. But what was most troubling was how they had done it. Their expansion model remains unlike anything in recorded galactic history, Humlaut continued. They do not conquer or coerce. They simply offer assistance and partnership to any species that requests it. The results speak for themselves. Dr. Melvar of the Andromedan Medical Collective had perhaps the most painful report to deliver. Federation medical facilities now treat more patients annually than all Council hospitals combined. Their research output exceeds ours by a factor of 5. Most significantly, they have solved medical problems that our best scientists considered impossible. How is that possible? Asked Deputy Fricks of the Altarians, though its watery voice carried little hope for a satisfying answer. Cooperation, Dr. Melvar replied simply. They share all research freely between species. Each medical breakthrough benefits everyone immediately. They have effectively created a galaxy-wide research network that operates without the competitive barriers that limit our own scientific progress. The reports continued, each one highlighting a different aspect of Council decline and Federation success. Educational systems that produced more qualified professionals. Infrastructure projects that completed in months rather than years. Conflict resolution methods that had eliminated warfare in Federation space. Environmental restoration programs that had reversed centuries of ecological damage. But the most damaging report came from General Moranek of the Nixari, who had taken over military coordination after the Cathara departure. The Federation's defensive coordination forces have responded to 14 major crises this year. Asteroid impacts, plague outbreaks, natural disasters, and even pirate attacks. In each case, they provided assistance to any affected population, regardless of political affiliation. They helped non-Federation worlds? Sethkari asked, its shell flickering with surprise. Yes, Speaker. Including 3 Council member worlds that requested emergency assistance. The Federation responded immediately and provided aid with no political conditions. They did not even request recognition or thanks. The implications were clear and humiliating. The Federation was providing better governance than the Council, not just to their own members but to everyone who needed help. They had made the Council's careful political calculations and territorial restrictions seem petty and self-serving. The intelligence reports from a Federation space painted a picture of a society that operated on principles the Council barely understood. Representatives from dozens of species worked together on joint projects. Resources flowed freely to wherever they were needed most. Technological innovations were shared immediately rather than hoarded for competitive advantage. Most incomprehensible to the Council was the Federation's approach to leadership. There was no single authority figure, no hierarchical command structure, no permanent ruling class. Decisions were made through consensus processes that included representatives from all affected species. How do they maintain order without central authority? Consul Vraktar asked, voicing the question that puzzled all the remaining Council members. Intelligence Director Sileth had spent months studying Federation governance structures. They appear to operate on the principle that cooperation is more efficient than coercion. Species participate in Federation projects because they benefit from participation, not because they are compelled to do so. That cannot be stable, argued Deputy Fricks. All government requires some form of enforcement mechanism. We thought so as well, Sileth replied. But Federation territories report virtually no civil unrest, no significant crime rates, and no internal conflicts. Their enforcement mechanisms appear to be social, rather than legal species, that fail to cooperate simply find fewer partners, willing to work with them. The most devastating intelligence came from within Council space itself. Public opinion surveys showed that majorities on every remaining Council world favored Federation membership over continued Council participation. Protest movements were growing on dozens of worlds, demanding that their governments withdraw from Council treaties. Young technician Zix of the Kaplarians, who had become the Council's primary expert on Federation monitoring, delivered the final piece of crushing intelligence. Speaker, we have detected a communication sent to all Council worlds 3 days ago. It was broadcast on civilian frequencies and addressed directly to planetary populations rather than governments. What did it say? Zethkari asked, though it suspected the answer would be painful. Zix activated the recording. Elena Vasquez's voice filled the nearly empty chamber. Still calm and professional after all this time. To the peoples of Council Space, the message began. The Cooperative Federation extends an invitation to observe our methods of governance and cooperation. We believe that all species deserve the opportunity to participate in decisions that affect their lives. Any world that wishes to send observers to learn about our approaches to mutual cooperation is welcome to do so. We do not seek to interfere in your internal affairs, but we are happy to share our experiences with any who are interested in alternative possibilities. The message was devastating in its simplicity. Elena was not speaking to governments or political leaders. She was speaking directly to populations, offering them something that the Council had never provided: a choice. Speaker Zethkari pulsed through a long sequence of colors as it processed the implications. The Federation was not just competing with the Council for members. They were appealing directly to citizens who felt unrepresented by their own governments. How many worlds have responded to this invitation? Zethkari asked. Zix's forearms moved in a gesture of profound distress. All of them, Speaker. Every remaining Council world has sent observer delegations to Federation space. Some have sent multiple delegations representing different political factions. The chamber fell silent. The Council had lost its monopoly on galactic governance. Populations across their remaining territory were actively exploring alternatives, and those alternatives appeared to be more attractive than what the Council could offer. Consul Vraktar's leaves rustled with resignation. What options remain available to us? For the first time in galactic history, the Council faced a situation where they had no good options. They could not compete militarily with the Federation. Their combined forces were smaller and less coordinated. They could not compete economically. Their rigid hierarchical systems were less efficient than Federation cooperation models. They could not compete politically. Their authority-based governance was less popular than Federation consensus methods. Zethkari floated silently for several minutes, cycling through color patterns that reflected deep contemplation. Finally, it pulsed with the formal blue of official pronouncement. The Council will transmit a formal communication to the Cooperative Federation, requesting diplomatic contact to discuss